Well, in my home province of Alberta, within the past 10 years, we've shut down all of our coal plants. And we're selling massive amounts of coal to China. As you say, Alberta is sitting on the fourth largest oil reserves in the entire world. We have the ability to be energy independent, as does the United States if they make the right decisions. The question is, why are all of these wrong decisions being made? Why and who? Why is this being done? And who's driving up the cost of energy for everyone? And what do you think is the ultimate end game here?
Well, there's a variety of different aspects and peoples who are helping with the climate and energy lies and scam. We've created a multi-trillion-dollar international green industrial complex that has spent a lot of money. We The media outlets have gotten literally tens of millions of dollars to promote climate change and the climate change agenda, to work it into all kinds of different stories. So they proudly take tens of millions of dollars to propagandize us and spin what is actually the truth. So there's a green grift going on. Those subsidies are necessary for those companies, or wind and solar would die on the vine. And they're also doing it, gives them purpose. So you have people who believe it as a religion, can't see any other facts, get angry with you if you give them facts like I'm providing, and just don't want to know any of the truth, because it gives their life, because they've given up real religion. This is just Frank Lasee's opinion, and it's in the book. They've given up real religions of belief in God and a greater power over all of us, in favor of feeling good about saving the world from the climate. But the world doesn't need saving from the climate. Then you have the international globalists, the UN. What better to make more power for the UN? And they're seeking it. So it gives them a reason to meddle in every single aspect of our lives. And that's one big part of this, is the control aspect of it. It also helps communist China. The non-government organizations like Greenpeace and others, I believe, have gotten hundreds of millions of dollars from China to foment this, because it benefits China and harms the United States. And it's an expensive policy that we have. And now they're after the food supply as well around the
Mhm.
world. And again, you need a reliable, affordable food, reliable, affordable energy for prosperity in modern lives.
Of course, China has a dreadful history in the 20th century of imposing government-led famines, the sort of rationed abundance, which seems to be part of the globalist message. But another aspect that you talk about in your book that is really important here is not only propaganda but censorship. So one of the pillars of the Western world, Western civilization, is of course freedom of speech. It's being attacked everywhere, and there's an aspect of this that you talk about in your book, and climate and energy lies, expensive, dangerous, and destructive, and that is the climate censorship machine. And you use an example in your book of Chris Martz, who's a young weather historian, climatologist, sort of the other to Greta Thunberg. You want to talk about that and the role of censorship in this?
Yeah, absolutely. And they have to censor us. They have to censor people like me. They have to throttle this back. They have to censor people like Dr. Richard Lindzen, who is a physicist and a climatologist, highly qualified at MIT, one of our premier universities, and Dr. Will Happer of Princeton. They censor them, and they make their work unavailable. Google's in on it, by the way, makes it hard to find these alternative points of view. The UN and Google are partnering to give us only the UN version of the facts, and they're doing this on purpose, because when people find out and they get any facts that are disputing the narrative, their support for these crazy policies drops dramatically.
One of the things that you mentioned in your book that I found was really illuminating is, one of the things that people talk about, the climate alarmists say is, oh, there's more hurricanes and tornadoes and more people are being put out of their homes and dying and suffering property damage. But you make the point, and this is a really important one, I don't think many people realize, is that um, oil, coal, and natural gas, they are used to produce life-saving technologies that are actually vastly reducing the impact in terms of lives and loss of property and so on from hurricanes and other types of serious weather events. So that, in fact, if you look over the past century or so, advances in technology that are directly linked to use of fossil fuels, which create about 6,000 different products. Um, that's primarily responsible for saving lives that otherwise would be lost because of these serious weather events.
Well, it is amazing, and I just recently wrote an op-ed that points to companies that are using plastics and even metals come through the process of
Right.
using
Yeah.
coal and natural gas to make them, and a lot of electricity, which is a secondary form of energy. You have to make electricity from something else, and they were life-saving. They put them around hospitals in Florida to stop the floods from coming in. We have plastics that keep our food supply safe, and that gives it a lot more shelf life. So we have a whole bunch of products, as you mentioned, 6,000, but everyday products of all sorts are made with fossil fuels, and those would go away if you actually ended fossil fuels. We will have hurricanes, period. They're going to keep coming no matter what we do.
Hmm. You make the point in your book, Frank, that there are no low energy rich countries, and that really what's going on here is that the climate alarmists are attacking our energy and food supply with climate regulations and policies, and they're after our wealth. They're after the Western way of life. Now, Donald Trump, his policies are very different. He wants to make America great again, and part of that is to awaken this economic engine. A huge part of which is energy production. So, you want to talk about this sort of climate alarmism in the context of the presidential election?
Yeah, there are no low energy wealthy countries. Without energy, life for humans really sucks. It's really hard. There's just no way about it. Try to go a day without electricity and just see how it all works. Without energy, you really can't. So countries that have more energy do a lot better. There's a great movie. You can get it for free on YouTube. It's by Robert Bryce. It's called Juice, and it examines electricity, juice, around the world. And he goes and meets with people in India. And it's a really great little vignette story of a woman who is a tailor who uses a foot pump, a sewing machine, and saves literally a year of wages. So imagine having to save a year of your wages. It would take you several years to buy a sewing machine that was going to 5x her output. She was going to be able to do 5 times more work with an electric sewing machine. She got it. She finally got it. And their electricity is so spotty that it doesn't work most of the time. She can't even use this that she spent her investments on to up her productivity. Now, if she and her neighbors could all up their productivity, they would all be far better off. So that's absolutely true. And Trump recognizes the fact that if we have abundant energy, the cost of everything will come down.
In addition to talking about these problems, one of the refreshing things about your book, and also on your website, the In Energy and Climate website, is that you actually propose some solutions for people, some practical things that people can do in their daily lives, not controlling their carbon footprint, but there are some things that people can do that can really make a difference in their own lives and more broadly in their communities and in their nations. So could you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, rather than wasting our money on attempting to change the future weather and the climate, we should be spending our money, maybe not at all, because we shouldn't be borrowing money and adding to our $35 trillion national debt. But we should be spending money on hardening our environment. We know that we're going to have hurricanes, so Florida, as they rebuild, might want to look at putting their transmission wires underground. You mentioned earlier all the solar panels that are ripped up because of the hurricane, and we should be doing things that actually make a real world difference, like not rebuilding in floodplains, managing flood waters runoff. We need to find ways to take our money and our energies and put them into things that do well for us and advance mankind. The other is moving those 2 billion people off of wood and dung and onto propane would do so much wonders for the environment, and it would greatly reduce CO2 carbon. And we should be helping those poorer countries get ahead in life. And we should actually be fostering, rather than democracy that Bush put us on years ago, we should be fostering capitalism and the components that are really necessary, which are rule of law, rule of private contracts, rule of private property, a legal system that works, low crime. All of those sort of things go into economic prosperity and the welfare of people's lives. And we're literally spending trillions of dollars trying to stop the weather from changing, when in fact doubling or tripling CO2 in the atmosphere, which will take 200 years to double, by the way, would be very good for the planet. It would be a greener planet. More warmth is actually good, several degrees, and warmer yet would be very good for the world. There are no downsides to it as they claim there are. There are no tipping points as they claim there are. And historically, we know that weather and climate have changed dramatically of the Earth's free will from time to time, and we have no control over that.
Fascinating discussion. Those of you who have not yet picked up this book, you really must. It's called Climate, Energy, and Lies. The author is Frank Lasee. He's been our guest today. One other book I wanted to mention before I turn to our guest and ask him for a suggestion or two is called Climate and Energy, The Case for Realism. This is a book that was published earlier this year. So I thought that would be an interesting companion piece to Frank's book. So Frank, turning to you now, apart from your own book, are there any other books that you would recommend or sources of information that you would recommend to our viewers and listeners that might enhance their understanding of this topic, the topic of your book, and also some of the things you've been talking about with us today?
Yeah, there are a variety of very good books and authors in this area. The website CO2 Coalition has a lot of good information on it. The books by Greg Wrightstone, their executive director, are Inconvenient Facts, is a really good book. It lays out various, sets the record straight on many of the climate lies that we're told by the propaganda media. We should fear climate policy. We should not fear climate change. We should welcome warmth. We should welcome more CO2. They're good for the world, not bad for the world, as we're being told.
Well, thank you so much. That's a great way to end off. We want to thank you so much for spending this time with us to talk about such an important topic, and also to talk about your book. I've read it. It's excellent. I highly recommend it, and we want to wish you much continued success with the book. I hope it's a bestseller and that you'll write more. And I want to thank you so much for being our special guest here today on Gray Matter, Frank. It's been our great pleasure to have you on the program.
You are welcome, and I thank you as well.